Thank you very much. Chancellor, Mr. David Gonski, Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Mr. Richard Henry, Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Sciences, Mr. James Donald, staff of the university, members of the Australia Ensemble, distinguished guests, graduates, ladies and gentlemen. It's an immense honour to be joining you in the Sir John Clancy Auditorium for today's graduation celebration. I thank you sincerely for awarding me this high honour and also for the opportunity to now give the occasional address. It's been suggested that I might share with you some stories from my life in music over the last 30 or 40 years. In the words of Steve Jobs, no big deal, just some stuff that's happened. But before I do, I extend my sincere congratulations to all today's graduates. I praise your teachers, I praise your families, your friends and supporters for their part in securing the first part in a step towards a brilliant future. Today, you and I will leave by the same door, now members of this great institution. But our paths to this place are marked by a starkly contrasting approach to learning. To be joining you in this ceremony today is an accolade beyond my wildest dreams, but it is not necessarily a logical outcome of the path that I have taken. For me, this fact imbues my presence here with a very special significance. I share this day with my wife, Janice, my son, Joel, and my parents, Don and Heather. I thank them all for their unshakable faith in my abilities. I thank my father for his inspiration as one of the great clarinet players of his generation and for spending many hundreds of hours with me, teaching me all he knew about music and the clarinet. After years of disparaging report cards, he had the wisdom to pull me out of school when I was 16 and teach me himself. By now you would all be aware that this is about as close as I've ever come to a graduation. To play in the orchestra just like Dad had been my passion for as long as I could remember. I worked hard and within about a year I started to freelance with professional orchestras. I sought his advice for many years onwards as I forged my professional playing career. One thing is for sure, I was no prodigy. Music has never come easily to me. Whether playing the clarinet or composing, I've always had to put in the hard yards and plenty of them. My mother, a violinist, also a member of the Sydney Symphony for many years, was constantly in the background, offering stability and gentle encouragement. She once burst into my room while I was practicing a Brahms sonata, and with a certain fire in her eyes, she took me by the arms and said, "It must be beautiful. Music must always be beautiful." Very simple words, but easy to remember. I think of those words most days. My father would always talk about finding your bliss or finding happiness in your work. Again, words that have driven me to pursue joy and creative satisfaction in my work. The musical heritage which my father had so carefully instilled in me, which he in turn had learnt from his parents and his grandparents, was the foundation for all that followed, a long and winding road that eventually led me here to the campus of this great institution, where from the years 1987 to 92, I was a member of the Australia Ensemble as a clarinet player. In the intervening years, I had exposed myself to all manner of musical experimentation. I dabbled in improvisation, casually mucked around with composition, and by the time I was 19, had written a small collection of pieces. I spent the next 2 years on the road playing this music with a group of classical, jazz, rock, ethno-fusion musical vagabonds called the Magic Puddin' Band. These early naive attempts for composition led directly to commissions to write music for circus, radio, theatre and TV. I travelled to Europe to study the bass clarinet. Upon my return, I auditioned for a full-time symphony chair and was rejected. At the time, a difficult pill to swallow, but as the Dalai Lama says, sometimes we don't get what we want for the very best of reasons. I'd also fallen in love with my partner, Janice. She became my companion on this journey, my publisher, my agent, my muse, and my best friend. In fact, we've been working so closely together since my late teens that, if truth be known, half this doctorate actually belongs to her. By the time of my late 20s, we had two wonderful young sons, Joel and Eli, and I was grateful for the security of a real job with the Australian Ensemble here at the university. Standing in this hall today, I'm reminded of the dozens of workshops and concerts we performed on this very stage, and of the incredible opportunities that were available to us. Recording for broadcast and CD release, the planning of a highly innovative concert series for our audience, national and international touring. We played in Carnegie Hall, New York, Wigmore Hall, London. We played in Moscow, Paris, Tokyo, St. Louis, Shanghai, Beijing, Broken Hill, and everywhere in between. In Xiamen, China, we played our biggest audience ever, an auditorium of thousands. The concert was amplified through a highly distorted PA system, a relic of pre-cultural revolution. The signs along the side of the auditorium indicating no spitting appeared to have little influence as the entire audience hacked their way through the whole program. We played in Berlin in the days just after the fall of the wall. We received rave reviews in New Delhi for probably our worst concert of all time, on a piano that was a remnant of the British Raj and probably hadn't been tuned since about 1923. Nagasaki, another airport, another concert, another official banquet. But on this occasion, we were each assigned our own geisha girl. In full traditional costume, they knelt beside us, filling our sake cups, explaining the finer points of the menu, and performing traditional songs on ancient instruments in between each course. It was like something straight out of a Kurosawa movie. These were heady times and experiences I'll never forget. Last week, the ensemble launched its 33rd concert season here on campus. The longevity of a specialised group of such expertise is a remarkable achievement in the context of uncertain funding opportunities, falling concert attendances, and the embrace of pop culture by the masses. Yet the symbiotic relationship between the ensemble and the university is alive and well, and is testament to the original vision of Professor Roger Cavell, who since 1980 has been a major guiding force in its direction and concert programming. I'm reminded of the staunch support that the ensemble received from the Chancellor in my time here, the Honourable Gordon Samuels. And I take this opportunity to thank David Gonski for his ongoing support of the ensemble and for fostering this important contribution to Australian culture. I applaud the ensemble's support of Australian new music and their commitment to spirited and highly polished performances of the work of their compatriots. My colleagues from the ensemble performed on my very first film score, and I've been encouraged by their genuine enthusiasm for my work ever since. You can imagine it was with great reluctance that I bid farewell to the university in 1992 to pursue a full-time career in composition. Much of my work in film has exposed me to the brilliant minds and creative thinking of some of our finest directors. I've learnt much from their insight and working methods, my own process of composition driven by similar principles of intuition and emotional response. You would assume after a lifetime spent pursuing dreams in music that it would provide some solace in one's darkest hour. Yet after the sudden and tragic death of my young son Eli just before his 22nd birthday, music, as with many things important in my life, completely lost its meaning and relevance. Those most precious remnants of my son's life, my memories of him, were all that remained in my head, and there was very little room there for anything else. It was during this time that, in a desperate attempt to keep Eli's memory alive, our family established the Smugglers of Light Foundation as a tribute to Eli's innate qualities of empathy and compassion. The name comes from a quote written in the guest book at his funeral by one of his mates. "The gates of darkness shall never be closed to the smugglers of light." The young people who were with Eli the night he was taken have formed close ties with the Indigenous community and are involved in issues of social reform. They have encouraged us in our pursuits to promote cultural awareness, empowerment through education, and storytelling via the mediums of music and film in Indigenous and youth communities. We believe it is the qualities of trust, compassion and understanding that must now play a vital role in Australia's future with regard to its Indigenous people. Our family has been deeply inspired by their cultural heritage and the warmth and generosity shown to us by our newfound friends throughout the Indigenous community. When I finally worked up the courage to return to the studio some 12 months after losing Eli, I did so with the prime objective of honouring my son's life through music. As I pulled back the blinds, I noticed a score on the desk. It was a piece I'd been working on before losing Eli, an ode to the son called Mrs. Solace. I'd almost forgotten all about it. I began to leaf through its pages, and as it played in my head, I was struck by the power of the music. I saw the potential to further expand on this material in a way that might somehow reflect the enormity of my loss. I began again from scratch, pulling apart my ideas and reorchestrating them, adding sections, refining previous material. My memories of Eli were now becoming suffused within the score, and 18 months later it was finished. I've now conducted 3 performances of the Requiem with the Sydney and Melbourne Symphony Orchestra and recorded it recently for ABC Classics for release later this year. To be allowed the opportunity to express one's anguish through such a creative outlet has been a profound and powerful experience, not only for me but also for our family and many of Eli's friends. This process has played a role in healing our grief and provided me with the means to find peace through music for the soul of the departed son. Losing Eli has been a difficult lesson for me in the transient nature of life. I cannot imagine a more challenging one. But what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. And I see now that our lives are like an illusion. We spend it denying our inevitable demise, and we waste it, preoccupied as we are by trivial concerns and a reluctance to seize the moment. In our short time here, I believe we must ask ourselves, what drives us to get up in the morning? Are our choices in work, play and love informed by honesty and passion? Knowing from an early age that music was to be my chosen path has been my saving grace. I dread to think where I would be now without that single focus throughout my life, that constant thread that has somehow drawn all the pieces together. I've watched as others infinitely more talented than myself have fallen by the wayside simply because they lacked a conviction, passion and discipline for their work. Failure is an important lesson. It can be the undoing of us and it can be humiliating, but we must learn from our mistakes and make damn sure we never repeat them. So what is this bliss that my father keeps referring to? Where is it to be found? I'm told it resides deep in the brain, somewhere near the temporal lobes, when the dopamine begins to flow and the theta waves start to pulse. It's the zone of creativity where inspiration occurs and time stands still. If you're lucky, it's where great art is conceived and life begins to make sense for a sweet moment in time. The application of your newfound knowledge may not yet be obvious to you, and as the euphoria of today's celebration recedes into the past, you'll be faced with important decisions about your future and taking the next steps in your career. I urge you to leave no stone unturned in the process of finding your bliss through your work. Always follow your hearts, remain committed to your ideals and question your motivation. Ensure that your modus operandi is imbued by grace, integrity and compassion. I'd like now to finish with a quote by the great cellist Pablo Casals. This is his advice to all aspiring young musicians. Don't be vain because you happen to have talent. You are not responsible for that. It was not of your doing. What you do with your talent is what matters. You must cherish this gift. Do not demean or waste what you have been given. Work constantly and nourish it. Thank you.